There were 47 nationalities represented on this flotilla, about 490 people, right, and 46 boats. So that's what it consisted of. It was a grassroots initiative completely managed by the people for the people. There was no government affiliation, there was no NGO affiliation. Money was raised by people for this movement, right? Ourselves. Not a single dollar that was used was contributed by tax-paying money or used from any consular services, any embassy, any government services, or any corporate. It was purely raised, donated, and funded by the people for the people. The amazing thing about the Sumut Flotilla, or what it brought to what it represented, was unity amongst a number of different coalitions or movements. It consisted of the Global March to Gaza, which took place earlier this year, where they're trying to break the illegal siege by land. It consisted of the Freedom Flotilla movement, and it consisted of the Sumut Convoy, which was made up of North African countries that tried to break the illegal siege also, but through a car and bus convoy. And it was not perfect. And I can tell you, everything on this mission and experiencing it, it was not perfect. In order for a mission like this to come and be put together and be perfect would take about 3 years. Then in 3 years' time, there's going to be no one left in Gaza at this rate. So it was put together in 3 months. It was not near perfect. It was a very broken mission to start off with. And that's what we were signing up for. We knew that we were working with limited protocols. I can't even explain to you the type of boats that we were getting on. We were told by our lawyers, do not get on those boats, you are going to die. The boats will not make it to Gaza. They are not seaworthy. They are broken. And I can't tell you the amount of times I was in the engine room of this boat fixing the engine myself. How many times we threw buckets of water off this boat to prevent us from sinking. How many times we jumped into the sea to limit the amount of weight capacity on the boat so that we could fix it before we put capacity back on the boat. It was disastrous to start off with. I can tell you there were many times when I was on this boat where I thought I would die simply because of the ocean, not because of what would happen to me once I get into occupied Palestine. So it was a movement that you were signing up for, knowing that you are really risking, you're not going into a very safe condition, but that's what it was. We didn't have the time to make it safe. We didn't have the money, we didn't have the time, we didn't have the resources. We just had to do. We were all so desperate to do something that, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times they stood up in front of us and told us that you need to be okay with the fact that you're not going home and you will die. And if you cannot, please leave the room. That's what we were told. So that's what this mission was about. And that's what a lot of the flotilla missions are about, because that's the type of resources and that's the type of situation that you're working with. My experience on the flotilla, I was there for 6 weeks. What was initially supposed to be 3 weeks turned into 6.5 weeks of being away. We spent 2 weeks in Tunis, and then I was on the sea for 3.5 weeks, and then in prison for 1 week. I won't speak too much about the boats. As I said, there's a lot of that's on social media. But from the time that we got intercepted until the time that I was released, that was 7.5 days. During that time, myself and 400 odd other people were pushed, were beaten, were cable tied most of the time. My hands were cable tied most of the time. That I have a nerve that's severed in my one on the right side over here, and I don't actually have sensation in two of my fingers. My hands went purple. I didn't even notice because it was tied behind my back, and I was so worried about being beaten on my back that I didn't even notice that I've lost feeling in my hands. And the man that was sitting behind me saw my hands go purple and screamed for a soldier to come and cut my cable ties before I lost complete sensation in my entire hand. And that was the same for many other people. We were blindfolded, we were kicked, We were we were not given water. We were withheld from food. I was stripped naked 4 times in front of IOF soldiers. The third time I was stripped naked, I was sexually harassed. I was not allowed to wear my hijab. Some of this was because I was South African. There were other women, Turkish, Malaysian, that could wear their hijab, but they hate us South Africans because we took them to the ICJ. And so they beat us more, withheld our human rights. We were not allowed access to lawyers when everybody else was given lawyers. We were not allowed access to the paperwork. We were not allowed access to our consular services. Every prisoner was hostage, was given outside time on a daily basis, except for the South Africans. We were not allowed anything. They actively, verbally said, we were going to torture you because of what you did to us, because you took us to the ICJ. They gassed us every single night. I don't know what gas they gave us. I was actually sitting with Ben earlier, and before we came into the room, I took out my pump and I took a few puffs. And he was asking, do you have a sickness? What's wrong? I'm a pretty healthy person, alhamdulillah. I've never really been sick. I don't have any chronic medication. But they gassed us every single night, and since I've gotten back, I'm having respiratory issues. I live on a pump. I take it multiple times a day. I wake up in the middle of the night with a coughing fit, along with many, many others. I still don't know what they gassed us with, and I don't know how long the repercussions are going to last. But this is what they did to us. This is how they treated us. Nevertheless, this is nothing, nothing, nothing in comparison to what they do to the Palestinian hostages. Absolutely nothing. This pales in comparison. Pales in comparison. And knowing that is what got us through. Knowing that just reaffirms our commitment to fighting for the freedom and the liberations of the Palestinians, and that we have to survive this. We cannot break. We have to make it through, and we have to go back, and we're going to keep going back until this stops. In my cell, we were in Fitzroy prison in Negev Desert, which is actually where they actually don't take the flotilla members. They actually have a prison in Ashdod port where they hold flotilla members. But because this was the biggest flotilla, hundreds of people, they couldn't hold us there. That prison caters for, I think, maximum 70. So they processed us at the detention center in Ashdod port, put us in a military vehicle. We were cable tied, we were blindfolded, we were dragged. When I say dragged, as in dragged on the floor, on the asphalt, chucked in cells in a military vehicle. You know, these, I don't know if you see them on the movies, but there's multiple cells in a vehicle, like you are the most highest serial killer in this world. Each person in a cell, you don't see anything outside. You're in a very small cell. There's no air, there's no ventilation, there's no window. They put us in these cells and they drove us to Kitzbühel prison in Negev Desert. While we're being driven there, they blasted us with cold air. Such cold air that your body started going numb and turning purple and you lost sensation. And then they stopped and then they blasted you with hot air and you would start sweating. And then they did cold air and then hot air and cold air and hot air. And this went on for 4.5 hours. Bearing in mind, we haven't had a sip of water for the past 24 hours and nothing to eat. They just weigh your body down. By the time we got to the actual prison, you could barely walk. Your body was so fragile, you could barely walk. And again, I will say this. This is nothing in comparison to what they do to the Palestinian hostages that they take there. I was put into cell 11. On the walls of my prison, the doctors there were 2 doctors that left messages for us. One from Al Shifa Hospital and one from Al Nasser Hospital that were in that prison 2 weeks before us. And they were told they're going to clear the cell, the prison, to cater for us. And some of these doctors wrote notes on the walls for us. And behind their notes was blood splatters, just everywhere. We slept on concrete floors riddled with ants, cockroaches. You had a toilet in your cell and you had a tap. And that was your source of water, brown water coming out of that tap. That was the only water we had access to. We were not given sanitary items. So those women that were on their period, you bled straight through. You sat, you slept in your blood for 7 days. You were not given access to clean anything to clean you. That was the state of it. In true fashion of solidarity, those that did have their periods used the blood of their periods to write Free Palestine on the wall. And then we were beaten for that. They would come into our cells, 25 men, armed men, into one cell, and they would beat you. We had guns pointed to our heads most of the time. Every time I stood by the door of the cell to get a bit of fresh air, I had a laser pointed right here on my forehead from the guy on the top of the wall and laughing at me. When they stripped you naked, they would gladly leave the door open for everybody else to see you, and they would mock your body in front of everybody. They would mock the size of your breasts, they would mock the shape of your body, they would make fun of you. They tried to break us emotionally, physically, and mentally. Alhamdulillah, we all okay. Alhamdulillah, we are fine. We were steadfast because we rallied around one thing, and that is we knew what we were getting ourselves into. We knew what we were signing up for. We knew we were not dealing with anything moral in any way or form. This was pure evil on so many levels. But we knew we were there for the Palestinians and the Palestinians only and alone. And most of us who came out, if not all, have said we would do it all over again. And we plan to do it next year again, despite the torture. This time we'll go in a lot more prepared. We might do some things differently. I want to talk to you also just about the IOF soldiers and the look on their faces. They've got nothing, nothing. It's one thing seeing them on videos and seeing what they do. When you look at them and you look in their eyes, there's nothing. They're just evil. It's evil. You can't even engage with them. They are so indoctrinated to a level that you can't even engage. There was one guy, I was being called day 4 to finally see my consular. And I was being taken out, and I was standing at the check, like almost like a check gate. I was waiting to be let through, and there was another guy on the other side, and he said, "Salam alaikum." And I looked at him and I said, "Wa alaikum salam." I asked him, "Are you Muslim?" And he said, "Yes." And I just looked at him and I said, "Astaghfirullah, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And he looked at me and he just shrugged his shoulders. And I said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And he said to me, "No English." And I said, "You just spoke to me English. What are you doing? You are Muslim. You are killing your brothers and sisters in Palestine. What are you doing? Astaghfirullah." And his tears filled with a little bit of, his eyes filled with a little bit of tears. I couldn't understand it. And he just walked away. And then he took me to the consular. And I had my meeting and I came back. And while we were walking back, again, I just stopped. And then he looked at me and I said, "Why are you doing this? You are Muslim. Why are you doing this?" And he looked at me and he just said, "Hamas." And he carried on walking. And he took me back. I just, I, I just cannot understand it. It's so hard to look at them it's just hard to understand what is going on in that head. It's really